when you get a chance to do your vision board, folks do a vision board every year, and we stand in our intentions and manifest those intentions. A vote is that. It's an opportunity to participate in in that, setting your intention.
What's up, everyone? As you know, it is so incredibly important that we get out to vote. Voting is this upcoming Tuesday. It's November 8th. And we need y'all out there at the polls. And one of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to have a conversation with someone who has been doing work in this area for years in Georgia about the importance of voting. So I am about to welcome to the show Malika Redmond. Malika is the co-founder and CEO of Women Engaged, a near decades old initiative that develops the civic leadership of Black women, femmes, and girls year-round, nonpartisan voter engagement and reproductive justice advocacy. She has managed human rights, racial justice, and youth empowerment projects both nationally and internationally for over 20 years, including founding the International Black Youth Summit in 1994. Malika currently serves as the board chair for the Pro Georgia Civic Engagement Table, and she has been honored by Planned Parenthood Southeast, the Feminist Women's Health Center, and as a 2016 Distinguished Rockwood Fellow for Leaders in the Reproductive Health, Rights, and Justice field. Malika is a global travel enthusiast with a focus on Africa and the African diaspora, a proud alumna of Spelman College, and an adoring mom and auntie of amazing young people. Q Points, welcome Malika Redmond to the show. Hey.
Yay! Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, we are so excited to have you because we have to have this conversation to make sure that we get folks out to vote. It is so important. And we felt like a good place to start is just kind of setting the groundwork. So, how did you become politically engaged?
Look, I love that question because I have to talk about my grandmothers, and because they are um, women who vote every year, and my mother's mother would also volunteer as a poll worker and go and work the polls on election day, and she would dress up and go to the polls and work. And, so it was something that I saw all the time. My parents voted, but, my grandmothers, there was a way in which, and I think it's their generation, that just really took their vote as something that they were really proud to go and do. Not a nuisance, not something like, oh, I forgot I got to go kind of check this off the list or something, but something they were really, really proud to go do and felt it their duty. And, we would have conversations in the home about, issues and stuff like that. So it was something that, I couldn't wait to be able to participate in actually, because I saw them like this was important. Uh, and I would say that a little bit more of that is just really, seeing, the people in my life close to me, my mother, my grandparents, my seeing my family fight for what they're part of this American experiment, and a lot of that entwined in that is, points of injustice as Black people. So being politically engaged was always a conversation in our household. Being civically engaged was always a conversation. And so it always became something that um, just was part of me.
Yeah. Um,
Mhm.
one of the things I remember as when I was really young, and it made an impact on me, is the first time I can remember my parents taking me with them to vote. And I
Wow.
remember going into the like little booth, and they had like, it was like a big like lever. It seemed really big to me. It probably wasn't as big as it was, right? But it was like shroom, and I'm
Mhm.
like, wow. And then understanding that when they pulled it back, that was casting their vote. Like it was a whole thing. But I remember feeling so like it was so important.
Yes. Awesome. No, and those moments are so important, and I want for us to continue that practice because, yeah, that memory of being little and going to the polls with your family or with your parent or with your grandparent or whoever, and that impression it made on you, that impression it made on me, and it is something that is, just like a nice it can be a sacred moment for you and your young person, and, it doesn't have to be your child, but, we need hey, that's a campaign. Let's take our young people to the polls with us, so they can have that memory, that experience.
I absolutely love that. If Women
Mhm.
Engage decides to do that, please call Q Points because we need to talk about that. But to that point, so Women Engage, so you co-founded this organization. I had the pleasure of being able to work with you when I was in Atlanta. So I'm very familiar with the work that y'all do and have done over the years. But how did Women Engage kind of come to be?
Yeah, it's really a beautiful story. Um, really started out of a conversation, the kind of conversations that, between friends. So, my friend Margaret Cardbow and I, we would like chop it up, have conversations after work, at our respective kind of jobs. And, we're talking about everything. We're talking about, life. We're talking about family. We're talking about money. We're talking, and how to make more of it, or, talking about our passions and, our aspirations and different things. And then, and also talking about, things that we're concerned about, like what's happening locally, but also nationally and everything in between. And we thought to ourselves, well, you know what? Why don't we know we have enough skill. We have enough of what we need, experience, connections, network, whatever. We can start our own organization really designed around the issues that are paramount to the lives of Black women, femmes, and girls, unapologetically centering our issues and not needing to sort of compartmentalize them in order to prioritize everybody else in our community or every other, our family, everybody else but us, right? And so the idea was, can we center that? Pull, can we take those conversations that we may feel like we're alone in, those experiences, those challenges, and be able to create a safe space enough, not only that we can discuss them, but we can hold our elected leaders accountable to us thriving. We can hold our communities to us thriving, hold each other to it, to that, and make that sort of community web of support and be able to do that on a number of levels, right?
Mm,
And included in that is what does it mean to, you know, vote on the issues that are most important to you, most important to me, and being able to have those conversations in community and hold people accountable to them who want our vote.
mm,
Um, and so this is really how we kinda got started. It was just those conversations, after work conversations, and we just started to kinda go from there and slowly but surely put it together, our concept, our proposals, and form Women Engaged. Got some really good backing in the beginning, from Groundswell Fund. I'll raise them up and give a shout out. They were the first funder who funded Women Engage and provided that seed funding. And Groundswell Fund, I think still is the largest grants a funder of women of color organizations that work on reproductive justice issues. And so they supported us out the door, and that was really awesome. And it got us what we needed to start our signature program, which is our We Vote, We Rise integrated voter engagement program.
Thank you so much for sharing that amazing history and lifting that organization up. We will make sure that we include their link too in the description so that folks can get more information. Um, okay. So Atlanta has been the center of hip hop culture for almost 2 decades at this point. Um, with that has also emerged kind of the rising of political engagement. There's always been like the civic engagement aspect, I think, to hip hop, but we're definitely seeing more people on platforms, right?
Mhm.
And in some ways, acting as kind of like political pundits, right? Showing up in the space. What are your thoughts on hip hop artists kind of moving into that space? And from your perspective, does that is that working for the folks, particularly when I think of like folks in Georgia?
It's interesting. I appreciate the question, because I have to give this sort of caveat, just a little bit of context about me. I'm, born and raised in Pennsylvania, but I've lived here for a long enough to see, I came here as a student at Spelman College, right as like Freaknik was kind of slowly ending, but still here enough to kind of see, what it all meant to have that huge festival here in the city. And sort of around the sort of turning point. So it was like 96, 97, 90. It was when I came here as a young person, going to Spelman College, seeing like, the real like way in which Atlanta arts and the art scene as well as the merge of that art scene with sort of like the neo soul and the hip hop and all of the kinds of things that like really beautifully evolved from that and all the things that gone on. So it's been really amazing to be here and be witness to so much of all of what has been going on and continues in um such an important legacy. And I think on the one hand there's no sort of disconnect between, particularly in Black culture, a separation between like the arts and the activism, and and Black artists participating in those kinds of ways. I think what we are and what I hear you also speaking to is what does this moment mean as we're hearing some artists, using their platform to talk, especially, in moments like election cycles. Key election cycles is when, in some instances, we're hearing the voices sort of elevate, and you know, you, I think it is an absolute important question to ask, and for what purpose?
Right.
What
That
is the
is
pri
right.
yeah, yeah.
What's the purpose? Like we sit with that all the time, like because it's so important, right? It's such an important time. And honestly, the reason why we're doing this show is because we know how important it is. And
Yes.
we need to be hearing from folks. But it's also like I'm often, and I'm gonna use an I statement, I'm often left asking the question of, but who's this for?
Right, who is this for? What is and for what who is this for? What is the purpose? Um, you know, what have you read? Who are you reading? Is this not your own? In the sense of, what about whatever it is that you're sharing, is coming from a place that is continuing a line of, you know, disinformation or misinformation, or, or there's some things that need to be unpacked. can you, and I think there's something about, I think the other part for me, particularly as someone who runs an organization that listens more than the work at Women Engage, the key work at Women Engage, and how we get over 60+% of the people we talk to the polls on election day, higher, double than the national average every election cycle, because that's what it is, you know, um, is that we do more listening than we do talking. So, you know, we are listening to what our and asking, and we're asking questions that have us listen to what community members are saying are the things that are important to them. And so my question to artists with a platform, how much time are you taking listening prior to speaking? And what have you heard from others? What did you reflect on? So that, I think that there's because yeah. So that's the other part that I would say. And it's so necessary to listen. Um, Especially if what you argue is that you're a reflection
Mhm.
of, or, you know, of the people, or in some kind of way. So, so what are you listening to? Who are you listening to? And how often are you listening?
Mm. Wow. Okay. So that is a great lead in to my next question.
Mhm,
One of the things that we take really seriously about Q points, we put it in our philosophies. Like we are pro black, pro women. Like we center that on our show. Like the Q points is the place where folks can come in like, nah, we gonna celebrate you over here. We don't know what them other folks is doing. We don't do that over here. And I think, not I think, I know we
yeah.
become accustomed to black women having to save us. Like it comes up all the time. Like, black women came out and, hit the vote and swayed everything and do. Despite the enormous weight that carries, the kind of image that portrays, right? Which I think is in a line of a white supremacist imagery of how black women have been talked about for centuries, right? It's kind of continuing the same thing.
Mhm,
Um, so there's this growing narrative about like the chasm between like political ideologies between black men and women.
mhm,
Sir Daniel and I, so that's my co-host, we just be like, listen, y'all. We need the folks with the best ideas, with the best possibilities of getting things done,
mhm,
to do the things because it's tiring. And it's steeped in like, often we hear the
mhm,
conversations that happen publicly, we feel like they're steeped in misogynoir and patriarchy. um and so it gets tiring, right? So there's kind of this conversation about black men feeling left out or left behind, right, in this kind of current moment, being spoken to. I read this article recently, being spoken to rather than being spoken about rather than spoken to. That's specifically what the article was talking about. From your perspective, because I have a thought on this. From your perspective, do you think the narrative is real? And how do we push past it, even if it is real? Like, how do
right,
we get the best possible outcome for our folks?
right, right. So thank you. And I know that, like, whatever you're doing is going to be centering us at our best, and also like all of the ways in which, hey, we need to make sure that we're lifting up Black women, but not in the same old way, but in a real way. So I appreciate you for that, because it's so important. And and this thing, and you're right, because this idea of, Black women always sort of sacrificing the strong Black woman, all of the kinds of tropes that have for so long, quite frankly, been celebrated like it's okay. And, thank goodness there's been some real intervention around that as a conversation and saying, hey, we have to prioritize our self-care. And I'm so happy that that is being part of the conversation more and more for Black women and young Black women. And the thing I add to that is, self-care is also the way we get to self-care for Black women in math is self-care is about community care. Our community has to care and and the community has to care in the way of wanting to see us take care of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
not after you're fine, but as a priority, you know? And so, self-care, yes, but self-care happens inside community. So self-care is about community care. Community care allows for self-care,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes you have to make self-care happen. But wow, what does it look like when we have both happening? And so to your point, when we're looking at, and shout out to my Spelman sibling, Dr. Moya Bailey, for the term misogynoir, because it is so important. There is a particular experience of, the kinds of things that happen at the intersection of, um, sexism, Blackness, and, misogyny, women hating type behavior. And sometimes because it's so part of culture, it's not called out the
Mm-hmm.
ways that it needs to be called out. And so I'm so happy that you have this platform to do that, because a few things can be true, right?
Yes.
So at the same time, and that's the other thing that, I also hope that everyone can see that this is, so when we say that, for example, Black men are still the highest number of men at any demographic to vote in the way of progress nationally. That is still the truth, you know? And so that is the case. And what is also the case is that at the same time, when we see the backlash to particularly Black women competing in public space for political power, when we see Black women vying for opportunities to, stand in their power and name injustice, speak to injustices that have happened to themselves or to others, that when we see the backlash to it, sometimes that rhetoric is on through social media and other spaces, that unfortunately in there are too many instances where the Black men who are our allies in support of those issues, from the number of different issues, the voices become dim, or or very few, even if most maybe agree, but we don't hear you in mass and the kinds of numbers that supports us in the moment. And I think that that's very important. It's like having that. I think the other part is about when we're looking at the vote and we're looking at, you know, the other part, we are also seeing, or at least we've seen over the last two major election cycles, an increase. No, it's not the majority of Black men, but we are seeing a rise to a shifting narrative that is aligning itself with some very anti-progressive, harmful rhetoric that is not connected to our liberation as a total community. And we need to talk about that as well, even though it's not the majority of Black men. That's why both things can be true. The last thing I'll say about that is that we are not a monolithic community. We aren't a monolith. So it is important that everyone gets heard. And this is why I go back to the point that I made before. How much are we listening to each other? And so all that to say that there can be accountability for misogynoir, accountability for sexism and sexist behavior, while at the same time, looking at and saying, hey, we need for you to, you know, or tell us and talk and be
Mhm.
engaged in community about the things that, are important to you and to the future of our community. And so I think all those things can be true. And I think that is part of where we are right now.
Mhm.
And, yes, there are some opportunists.
Mhm.
And those opportunists who are trying to assert themselves as somehow speaking for the whole, I think what I appreciate about Black folks is that, you know, I don't see most Black people listening to that noise in such a way that is really swaying them, to some other kind of, I think, yeah, to some other kind of way. I think, and so I think that, and at the same time, you know, I think I think it's good that you have this platform to have this dialogue because we have to have it because the misinformation out there is real. And let me just say this a little bit about and like this disinformation. And let me just say real quickly that the other thing that we have to pay attention to is that those that are creating like, these storylines of conspiracy and, you know, you know, pushing out these kind of leaders that look like us, but absolutely do not have our best interests in mind, is that these are not just fly by night kind of, this is sophisticated kind of infiltration.
Mhm.
This is about paying attention and profiling and using maybe some level of historical truth and traumas of and current traumas and twisting it so that it fits a narrative that supports white male supremacy.
Mhm.
And and it is very sneaky and sometimes it is really sophisticated.
Mm.
And and so people have to be vigilant about what they're reading online, wherever, who the so and so person that you're paying attention to, who has a platform on YouTube or wherever. What is it, again, what's your purpose? And get to some of the root of that, before just sort of, so anyway, it's important and we can't, especially for those of us who do this work, like from, who do progressive work, who study this, we can't make it trivial because we see through it.
You thank you for all of that. Yes. And this is why I actually have been very excited about the opportunity that we have here in Pennsylvania. So one of the cool things, so over here, I got my mail-in ballot. Like they just sent it to me. And what I love about that is I get to sit down with my ballot, look at the names of each and every person there, go on to the Google, research the person, understand more, watch interviews, see what they have to say, because it's like it's not trivial, right? Like being able to have be able to do that has really helped me, I feel like, to be a more informed voter. So it's just an opportunity. So one of the things that I'm going to plug here is for folks wherever you are, you can print out your sample ballot. So before Tuesday, print out your sample ballot this weekend, Saturday, Sunday. Print out your sample ballot. Go through your sample ballot, see who the folks are, see what measures are you're being asked to vote on so that you can understand it. Sometimes that wording is really confusing. Ask your family questions. We have, I think, one of the things that COVID has provided us, I think, in this moment is an opportunity to rethink how we engaged with our political process
Mhm.
and the voting process. And I think it's just an opportunity for us to use it.
No, I love that, and thanks for saying that because we do want people to do that. We want them to look at this, do that bit of homework before going to the polls. We're in early voting. The last day to early vote here in Georgia is on Friday, November 4th. So that is the last day. So, go to the Georgia State website and Secretary of State's website, and you can see that sample ballot. Take a look at it, so that you can be prepared. Find your early vote location, go and vote now. And you have until Friday to vote early and get it done. And so, and so you get a chance to do that. The last day to vote is election day, and that is the 8th. So you still have some time to get it done ahead of the 8th. But of course, we are excited at Women Engaged to, be out there letting people know that they have time to go and vote and do it early, and they have until Friday, and then of course election day on Tuesday. But if you do need some assistance, like, or putting together your voting plan here in Georgia to understand what ID you need to take to the polls with you, where's your poll location, making sure all of those things that you have what you need when you go to vote, what time the polls are open, when they close, all of that. Contact us at womenengage.org. So womenengage.org, and sign up and let us support you do that. You can also call us at 404-474-2900. So if you're in Georgia and you need support, kind of walking through your voting plan, we can do that. Now, we're nonpartisan, so we're not going to tell you who to vote for, but we can make sure you know enough of what you need that you can go to the polls and feel confident when you go into the voting booth. So we're excited. We've seen some really breakthrough numbers in terms of early voting here in Georgia, and we just want to keep that momentum going.
Thank you so much for all of that information. Really quickly, why I feel like our entire conversation has been why this is important, but I want to give you an opportunity to tell the people why it is important that they vote no matter what. Get this
Yeah.
thing done between now and Tuesday.
Yeah, get this thing done because I took some time this morning, just sort of thinking about 5 years from now. Just 5 years from now, where do I want to see the state I live in, the city I live in be? The country I live in, the world, that we live in, that we have the privilege to be a part of. Um, and it starts now, when I participate, and it seems like, oh, just, this is such a small thing, but it's not a small thing. It is so much a part of how when you get a chance to do your vision board, folks do a vision board every year, and we stand in our intentions and manifest those intentions. A vote is that it's an opportunity to participate in in that, setting your intention. And so that is what I would say. It is a part of that intention setting. So go and vote because it's about setting the intentions you have for yourself, your family, your community, where you want to be, where you want to see your community be. And it is that first step.
Mhm.
And so it's very important that we all go and we do it and we participate and we set our intentions.
Oh, thank you so so much. So, couple more minutes. So I want to do one thing. So of course we're a music podcast. And music is so important to my life and most folks' lives, right? So I'm curious, What song kind of inspires you or keeps you motivated in the work that you do?
So the first thing that comes to mind is Chronixx, reggae artist, and his song "I Can." It's my daughter's favorite song, but we love the song. And so, it's kind of our wake up in the morning motivational song. And it really just kind of lifts the spirit. And, especially right now at a time where, things are really in some serious transition, and so and I love seeing, what it's like for my toddler to, be learning new things every day and seeing life through her eyes. And so yeah, so I can. That's what we're doing these days.
I absolutely love this. So,
Oh, sorry
no,
about that.
no, you're good. Listen, I love
Real
it.
life moment.
Right. Malika Redmond, thank you so much for joining us to mobilize our folks for voting. It is so incredibly important that we do this, and I appreciate the work that you do and the work of Women Engaged. Thank you for providing the website. We will make sure that the website and the phone number are in the description so that people can interact with y'all. So whenever people decide to go back and listen to this show, they can always get in touch with you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh yeah, this has been awesome. Thank you.